Welcome to the podcast recording of Middle East AI News Live for Thursday, April 25th, 2024, brought to you by Carrington Malin, Marketing for an AI-First World. You're listening to my discussion with Anton Alexander, Chief Technology Officer with Dammam and Riyadh-based technology company Watad. We're talking about the company's new 7 billion parameter bilingual Arabic-English large language model, key factors to consider for organizations planning to build their own LLMs, and market trends in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Let's dive into today's topic. In today's Thursday Deep Dive, we're going to be talking about a new Arabic large language model from Saudi technology company Watad and the need for sovereign AI. We'll touch on why Watad invested in building a large language model in the first place, how the LLM, which is called Mulhem, was built and trained, the challenges of acquiring and preparing training data in general and also specifically in Arabic language, and the need for sovereign AI, the way forwards for Saudi AI developers and enterprise customers, and more if we have time to cover that as well. So I'm going to be joined by Anton Alexander, Chief Technology Officer of Watad. Anton Alexander is an expert in building and optimizing high-performance computing systems, or HPC, and led the project at Watad that developed and trained the 7 billion parameter LLM, Mulhem. As CTO, he leads technology strategy and development at Watad, partnering with global tech leaders and helping customers stay at the cutting edge of the technology curve. He helps companies in oil and gas sector deploy high-speed computation systems with AI integration and next-gen solutions for large-scale operations. Anton moved to the Kingdom, Saudi Arabia in 2021 after holding a number of key AI roles in the USA, building production-grade AI and data infrastructure, optimizing HPC systems, and developing AI, IoT, and data transmission solutions. He advises and works with numerous enterprise customers in Saudi Arabia on cutting-edge AI technologies and solutions, from government to finance to the oil and gas industry. So a warm welcome to Middle East AI News Live, Anton Alexander. Not everyone can afford the systems and resources to build their own large language model, and not everybody has the expertise to do that either. So we're at the very early stages of LLM development in the Middle East. We've seen world-class models been released, so far mostly trained on English language data. And so there's a growing need for Arabic language AI models, and there are relatively few organizations developing those models with Arabic data. Meanwhile, there's more and more interest from big companies and government entities across the region in building their own models or adopting others, and they're doing the research that they need to decide whether to build in-house, to outsource, or to use existing models. So, Anton, before we begin to talk about the new Arabic model, Mulhem, it would be good if we could start talking about what's actually involved in building a large language model, what resources are required. Perhaps you could give us a sort of quick building LLM for dummies guide in this first 5 minutes.
So for my particular project, when I was tasked with this for building an LLM, and I'm not a researcher, I'm an engineer, right? And I'm going to go through the engineering design process more or less. So I'm going to look at certain things, right? So when you're training large language models, you need computation. You need to understand what your computational need for what particular a number of parameters you need. And you need to establish how accurate or how many parameters you need for your model. What's the breadth and depth and magnitude of the model's need for the organization, right? So there's different parameter sizes that provide different performance levels. And what do these parameters mean? Well, there's general rankings for these parameters. There's different benchmarks that you can look at, like the Llama 3 came out. You can see that Llama 3, 8 billion performs as good as like ChatGPT 3.5 in English. And you can see the Llama 70 billion 3 performs closer to ChatGPT 4, right? So depending on the performance metrics that you need, then there's also talent, which is like the most critical part. Do you have the talent within your organization to do this? Or do you need to outsource the talent? Then the last, but probably the most important part is data. And this is the challenge with a lot of, countries, not just organizations face. Do we have enough data to create our own models? And these are like the key components. Then after you kind of like get this together, there's also other things. LLMs are pretty large, so they require more than one GPU. So there's techniques to distribute this training across multiple GPUs. And these are called distributed compute techniques and frameworks. There's many of them. There's Ray, there's DeepSpeed, there's Colossal AI. And with these type of frameworks, they allow you to optimize on your training costs and as well as your inferencing costs. So training large language models are expensive. They can cost you upward of $1 million to $100,000, depending on your strategy in terms of distributed compute. So you need to make a decision on, your parameter size, your training strategy, your data and things like that. And I mean, these are critical decisions that can cost you, millions of dollars. And when you make a mistake, and the energy bill too is pretty high if you have your own infrastructure. And that's another decision that you also need to make, right? Do I go CapEx and purchase my own infrastructure, or do I go OpEx and pay for it in a cloud or some local cloud services and things like that? That's pretty much the decision metrics. Then the last part of it is basically what framework I'm going to use. What model am I going to use? What architecture for training my model am I going to choose? You have to make a decision on, are you going to pre-train this model as an organization, right? Or am I going to fine tune this? And what type of accuracy do I need with this model? So pre-training allows the model to become more coherent. Its ability to basically generate text becomes better depending on the data, of course, right? Because the data is the key. So if you supply good data, for example, Llama 7 billion, Llama 2 7 billion is not really that coherent in Arabic, right? But once you pre-train it, it can generate Arabic text better. That's a decision you have to make with your technology team and your team that's training the model. Then fine tuning, right? You hear the word fine tuning, but there's multiple techniques to fine tune. There's SFT, there's RHLF, there's DPO, IPO. People have different beliefs on this, and researchers are very religious about this. Once again, I'm not a researcher, I'm an engineer. So I'm making the best decision for my organization to reach their target. That's kind of like the overarching viewpoint of training a model for your organization. And also like your fine tuning set. That's basically it, Carrington.
You make a good point that building a model for business use where you've got commercial imperatives is a bit different to building in an R&D institution. And I guess this means that you're less inclined to take some risks if you know you're going to get a good result with what you know.
Exactly.
Presumably, all of these activities, the talent, the systems, the data, and the fine-tuning, all of this equals reals, dollars at the end of the day. And this will cost you a lot to get right, and it will also cost you a lot to get wrong.
A lot. It costs you a lot to get wrong. A lot.
Let's start on talking about Watad and the project that you ran. To start with, why did Watad make the decision to build its own Arabic LLM?
Great question. I mean, that's a golden question, right? At the time that generative AI, we were primarily focused on computer vision. I had a lot of friends that were at Google, NVIDIA. I have very good friends at NVIDIA in different organizations. And when Google came out with the attention is all you need paper and generative AI and ChatGPT came into fruition, there was a huge boom and everybody was so interested in ChatGPT, had their opinions on it. And, at first AI was about, in terms of like real industry, was Industry 4.0 and IoT and basically computer vision and things like that. Then ChatGPT came and generative AI came and really changed the game, right? And being here in Saudi Arabia, there was huge initiatives for AI, and it basically became an initiative within organizations. The Saudi government, it's a lot of support here, especially the NTDP program, Gaia, the Generative AI Accelerator. They have a lot of initiatives into AI and support locally here within the government, right? Which, we're in that ecosystem. We get a lot of support from them. And the business here is more geared towards local companies and enabling local companies, which Watad is a local company. So we saw that was an opening for us to basically get into generative AI with our skills. We have a very talented team. I have a great team of engineers here, particularly Saudis. Like most of my team is Saudi engineers that I've basically trained. We're NVIDIA partners. So we're partners with NVIDIA here in Saudi. We sell NVIDIA infrastructure to large organizations and we install them. So with that, we saw, hey, man, we have the talent, we have the skill. Let's work on an LLM. why work on an LLM? We've tested other LLMs for production-based use cases, particularly like retrieval systems and with bring your own documents type of thing. And the performance in Arabic was not that good. Second of all, Saudi Arabia is unique from every other Arabic country. Their protocol and the way that things must be communicated is much different, right? And the cultural sensitivity to Saudi Arabia. So basically, things that you might ask in another country might not be appropriate in Saudi Arabia, right? And if you have a product, you're displaying your product, and the guy who comes, who's not an AI researcher, who's not an AI engineer, starts asking certain questions to this model, and it doesn't respond culturally sensitive, this can be a problem. So this was the issues we tried to fix, and the relevant data to Saudi. Like you ask about certain areas or certain cultural nuances, this wasn't available. So basically, with new training techniques such as DPO, we saw this as an opportunity to kind of like preference our model or make our model unique with a Saudi identity, one, and be culturally sensitive to Saudi Arabia versus other countries, and also be able to have an optimal retrieval system. That's our focus business. Our focus in generative AI, we are a business, and our goal is to get big wins to our clients. We're focused on our customers, right? And we take ownership over the business that we're working with them at. And most of the need here, because of the government restriction on data, the data can't leave the country in a lot of government organizations. So having retrieval system based on Arabic models that can understand and extract data in Arabic, where people can take their organizational data, embed it, put it into a vector database, and have an AI model that's able to understand this data as well as be culturally sensitive to Saudi Arabia in a way it communicates, and having a Saudi identity was what we thought would be a great business to embark on. And there's a lot of other models. We're friends with the guys at G42. They did a great job. There's one from CAX as well, and it's really great. For us personally, we're a business and we're more business centric. So, and we had the means and the finances and the technical know-how to create our own model that was more geared towards business purposes. So that was kind of like our motivation, if that makes sense.
So it wasn't simply the Arabic language, it was also having a model that's specific to the local domain that references Saudi information, culture. And I guess this is AI sovereignty, isn't it? This is the building of your own technology that protects the sovereignty of your data and also is appropriate for local needs and accesses local culture and language.
Yeah, exactly. And it was trained in Saudi. Like we didn't use overseas servers. All the data was kept here. We had some data on like storage buckets in Google, but we were using the local region here. This was the first ever model fully sovereignly trained in the Middle East.
Let's just backtrack a little bit to what Watad does day to day, because AI seems to be core to your offering and what you're doing with enterprise customers in Saudi.
Day to day, basically, we work with our partners here. We have strong partnerships. Like I said, we're partners with NVIDIA. We're also partners with Colossal AI. And maybe I should talk about our partners a little bit. Is that okay? Who assisted us with training the model? So, like I said, I'm an engineer, right? And a lot of you guys have flown in a plane or driven a car or rode in a bridge before, right? And as an engineer, if somebody asks me to build a plane or a bridge or a car, I got to make sure it kind of works, right? Because if it fails, people can get hurt. So when I designed this LLM, I had to make some decisions. I looked on GitHub, I did research, and I found one of the best companies in the world in regards to training large language models. They were the actual first company to work in the world to open source our RHLF, right? Which is the method that OpenAI created for creating ChatGPT. They just recently open sourced Sora, OpenAI's video generation. It's called Colossal AI. They're our partners. We have a agreement with them in the entire Middle East, exclusive agreement with them. Dr. James Dremel from Berkeley is the leading HPC professor in the world. And Professor Yang Yu is the basically leading expert and most published professor when it comes to HPC. He's out of Singapore. And he went to Berkeley. He's a PhD. So as an engineer, I'm trying to get the advice from the best shipbuilder or plane builder. So when I put my family in it, I'm pretty sure it's going to reach a destination in one piece, right? We at Watad, that's kind of like our business model. We're going to form the best, most strategic partnership. And this is what we did. So they assisted us in building this Arabic LLM. And we're also partners with NVIDIA. We had some help from NVIDIA, my friends over there, Brandon, different guys, right? And great advice in terms of like optimization and what Colossal Framework does as opposed to other frameworks. And researchers have their own opinions. Colossal allows you to optimize the training costs and also speed up the time of training. Some of our customers are the biggest customers in Saudi Arabia in terms of like organizational size. And so we have to meet their needs. So we're not really looking at who's doing what or what is what. We're just highly focused on our customer and their satisfaction and how to make ourselves as an organization and our model better. And like I said, that's why with strong partnerships with technically proficient people, finding the best technology to run our models on and gathering our clients' requirements and having strong communication with them and taking ownership over the projects that we have. So basically, I would say that's our daily task.
Anton, let's talk a little bit about the project management approach that you had for this new large language model and how you assembled all of this.
So the project management side of things, right, in AI is a little bit different because conventional, a lot of people here probably are used to Jira, Confluence, and different things which we use, right? But with AI, there's a new challenge, especially with these large language models that exist. It's storage of the data and versioning of these large models. Hugging faces is a big factor in here, right? I have my project manager, Hamza, based here in Saudi. We use Jira, we use Confluence, but something else that we use large buckets and we have our own storage. So we are selling a model that can be locally deployed and developed in Saudi. So what we had to do is architect our data pipeline. This is part of the project management scope, understanding the chain of custody of the data, right? Because if you get audited or so you're saying, hey, I'm doing sovereign AI, local AI, how does this look like? So architecting your data pipeline and basically storing your data in a format that when it's time to train the model could just be trained, right? There's different types of data sets. There's pre-training data sets, right, which require meta tags and metadata. Where did I get this data from? What time did I get it? Who collected it? Was it annotated by a human? Was it reviewed by a human? So basically, this is part of the management process, storage of the data. And this is a critical part, right? And this pre-training data is just large chunks of text that you extract. Then there's that management of that entire process of taking a data from a data source, whether it be a website, a book, a PDF, whatever it is, extracting this data and storing this data. Then you have the other part, which is you need to build something called instruction sets, right? So what is ChatGPT and why is it different from GPT? ChatGPT is a model, a generative model that's trained on instruction sets where there is a question and a response, okay? And that's a lot different than I give it a couple sentences and it generates the rest of the text. That's a generative transformer model. That's just generation, right? But when you fine tune a model for a downstream task, such as a chatbot like ChatGPT, this requires a different data set. To get these data sets, it requires a specific process where you take relevant data and you develop questions and responses. And sometimes like we have our own proprietary technique. We have our own models that are trained in Arabic and English to basically generate these Q&As from small chunks of data. So we have a pipeline that we've developed to basically create these Q&A data sets. And there's different types. There's DPO, which is direct preference optimization, right? Which is basically what we kind of did with our model. Sometimes a model might respond with an answer that's not appropriate. It might be right, but it might not be the preference that we want, specifically for Saudi Arabia, right? And these data sets must be hand annotated. Somebody has to sit and review them. So you might ask a politically sensitive question that for Saudi Arabia, it might not be appropriate because of religious and different things, you know? So we use techniques and created a pipeline to kind of like create these data sets. That's the most critical part of the project management. Then you can use your regular, Agile, Jira, Confluence. The other part is storing these data sets and storing model weights and versioning your model. So as your model trains, you might train it one time, train it a second time, train it a third time. How do you manage these models? How do you manage these data sets? We use Hugging Faces, which is standard across the industry right now. We store some of our data on there, and then we store in-country cold on our own storage units here in Watad. We also sell storage as well. We're a storage distributor for Weka and Vast Storage, which is like high-performance storage that's certified by NVIDIA, by the way. So we are experts on data storage in terms of selling it and deploying it in superpod architectures. We are NVIDIA partners. There's 3 in the kingdom. We do sell supercomputers, but we also build solutions on top of the supercomputers. So for organizations that are trying to like build these type of systems, we build them so we understand them. We've basically created a rules of best practices that we follow every day, and our team follows these. Then the code and the management of things is typically Jira, GitHub, things like that. And then we have a local deployment of Label Studio. Some people use, I don't particularly use it. I just use raw JSON format for storage of the data. And that's really it. Like, and then training, right? How do you manage training and how do you manage training pipelines? Well, once your data is stored correctly and you have Hugging Face's data set format, you can basically start the training pretty easy, right? And the last part about this management of training an LLM and project management is annotation. Human basically reviewing data and checking data, right? Either using large language models to kind of check the data or actually having humans go through and annotate the data, depending on how severe the data is. Oh, and also counting tokens, because you have to reach a certain number of tokens to train your model. So you also have to manage your token count. So we have our project manager. He manages each specific meta tag from the data. So this data is gathered from blah, this source, and the subject is this. So we have scripts that go through and say, we have X amount of tokens on Saudi politics. We have X amount of tokens on Saudi government, general Arabic tokens, blah, blah, blah. So you need to kind of like have a diverse, balanced set of tokens in different areas, whether it be pre-training or fine tuning. So the data balance is very important. So that's all part of the project management lifecycle for training LLMs.
The data really is all important. Let's just touch on the availability of that data. So Saudi domain-specific data, Arabic language data. We have challenges. So what were those and how did you cope with those?
Oh man, this is a real challenge, right? And this is like what we're good at. So this is what separates us from everybody else. If you look at Wikipedia, the entire Wikipedia data set, it's like about like 5 billion tokens, I think, right? Let me see. I'll tell you. The entire Wikipedia in English is barely like 100 million. They have one Wikipedia 40 billion. That's 40 billion tokens of 1.5 million Wikipedia pages, right? And that's in multiple languages, every single language, like you can imagine. The biggest data set right now is Wiki 40 billion. The Saudi data on the internet is not that available. So, and there's not a lot of open data sets on Saudi. If you check on Hugging Faces, guys, Hugging Faces is like your primary source for all your data. That's where I go to get all my data and look and get a general understanding, right? This is one of the challenges that we faced. Basically, we had strong support from the government of Saudi Arabia. Our CEO, Mr. Mohammed Muteri, he has long-standing relationships with many of the officials here in Saudi. And we worked with some of the companies from NTDP and Gaia, the accelerator here in Saudi, to build our own like web scraping. And also we got permission for the data that we would use. And we're developing our own Arabic-based document extraction software. The entire engine is about 1% Arabic to 2%, right? And most of Arabic language lays in like books and different things. And us as a company, we saw this challenge. So we've actually developed our own extraction software and models to extract data. So we use AI to extract data. We use AI to basically change or permeate the data to create more tokens. So, and we had exclusive access to some data sources with the help and assistance of the government. We had strong government support here in Saudi Arabia, by the way. Once we got the data, we have our own proprietary models and techniques that we use to basically get the data and store it. And we have a lot of data, I would say that. And I think we have the largest fine-tuning data set in the world when it comes to Arabic.
Wow. And just to put what you said in context, I think your model was trained on 90 billion Arabic tokens and 90 billion English tokens, right?
English. Yeah.
So when you talk about the whole of Wikipedia being, how many did you say?
Billion.
40 billion. And you're looking at training an Arabic model, that is a big gap to bridge.
Yeah, it's a big gap. The data set that GPT was originally trained on is called the pile. And it's a combination of Wikipedia, Reddit, all over the internet. So like they came up with novel techniques for scraping data. And that's kind of like what we do, right? Like I said, we're engineers. So basically, I'm not a researcher. Salute to the researchers. I appreciate everything you do. But my job is to basically build a plane that will fly and get the job done and safely land. I'm a pilot too, by the way, right? So that's my job. Like, I'm going to fly this plane. I'm going to get the family safely there and land. We are developing novel techniques to get the job done the best we can to serve our clients. Because once again, we are client focused. Our client success is our success. And we're going to deploy the best techniques to do that, right? And coming from, being in America, working with some of the top guys in the AI field, coming from, a more security or defense background, it's the mindset's a little different, right? It's all about co-creation capability and mission success. So we're focused on accomplishing our mission and making sure the client gets the best. And we take ownership. It's like our company. So we're going to do whatever it takes and use the best techniques to deploy these large language models. And like I said, our partners are the best in the world. And we have an exclusive relationship with Colossal here in the Middle East. And they have one of the #1 Chinese models in the world. I think the best on Hugging Faces. So with their expertise, we kind of took that and how they gathered their data set. They assisted us and assisted our team. And like I said, it's about the knowledge transfer, right? I'm not a native Arabic speaker, but I had the Saudis working with me. And that's something that our company and our CEO really pushes. It's about the knowledge transfer. So we had Jawahir, Hessa, Yara, a lot of Saudi ladies work with us, and they led the development of the data set. I'm really proud of their work and their efforts, and I'm really proud of my team and what they did with this data set. It was a big challenge, and they were able to do it. So having the right team, it's not just me, by the way. I just want to say this, like, it's my team. And I take my hat off to them, and I really appreciate them and their hard work that they put in. Even on the weekdays and stuff, my team's really passionate. And this data set would have not been what it was if it wasn't for them and the team that I had with me. So, yeah, that's pretty much summarizes the data set.
A mountain of work then, and quite intimidating once you get to understand that, to go ahead and plan this and develop your own model.
Oh, yeah, it's intimidating, the amount of data that you need.
I have a question from Rob Hayes, who's listening. So what would you say, Anton, are the top 3 factors that an organization should consider before they decide to build their own LLM, compared with using an LLM off the shelf or bringing in a vendor to provide one?
Hey, Rob, how you doing? Great question, right? So I think the key factors you need to consider is access to compute, one, right? Because you can get data, you can, like, at some point you can buy talent with money, right? You can throw money at the data problem. You could throw money at the talent problem. To some extent, talent is kind of hard right now, but the thing you can't throw money at is GPU allocation restrictions. So you need to really do an analysis of how much GPU compute can I really get in terms of the parameter size of the model I want to get. And once you can allocate and get that GPU, then you can look on, okay, do I have the talent to do this? And do I have the data to do it? If you have compute, talent, and data, you can do it, right? So those are the 3 factors. #1 is compute, because the compute is finite. It's a global shortage. It's highly regulated by the US. So those are the 3 factors. Then the other side of compute is, after I train my model, do I have the compute to basically deploy my model on top of that? And do I have the skills to do inferencing? So training and inferencing are 2 different skills as well. So you need to break those up into departments. The training, you need compute, you need data, and you need talent. And for inferencing, you need talent and you need compute.
Thanks, Anton. And I have another question as well from Abdullah Musa. Is the Mulhem LLM going to be available as open source? Is it licensable? Is it accessible to other people?
Our clients are big governmental clients. We're going to give access to people via API and a token. We usually engage in customers. Most of our customers are very big and our contracts are very big. We serve the government here in Saudi Arabia, basically in the private enterprises here. Carrington, I showed you yesterday some of the businesses that we're interacting with, some of the biggest projects here in Saudi. Some of my friends are here from some global companies that we're looking to form partnerships with. So Mulhem was created strictly for enterprise. We are looking to open source our 7 billion model soon because we're going to raise our parameter size and release that on Hugging Faces with our research paper. But right now, we were in the process of closing 2 big deals for enterprise. They've tested out other models that are available in Arabic, and our model is the highest performing model right now in both English and Arabic for RAG. So after we have finished our contract right now with our 2 clients, then we'll open source the 7 billion. But right now we're training 2 higher parameter models right now. So inshallah, in the future, it will be open source. We'll release a paper. We'll tell everything that we've done. But at the moment, we're not, but we are open to give access.
Great news. Congratulations. And I guess you're a commercial company, so you're busy. So, it needs to take its priority first. You need to make sure that you're in business.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So commercializing large language models and generative AI is very hard to do. If I ask as an exercise for somebody here to give me a financial analysis of how much it would cost you to build a model in terms of CapEx, OpEx, compute and resources, and give me a financial projection, a lot of people can't do that. The best lawyers, financial people, they can't. It's a new skill. People don't know how to financially model this. If you have research budget or just money, like you can kind of do it like OpenAI. But if you're an organization and you're trying to figure this out, it's very hard. It's like licking your finger and putting your finger in the air and trying to guess where the wind's blowing, right? So, that's one of the skills that we do have and is very unique to us is to do that. And that's going to be a skill that all organizations are going to need in the future to kind of like commercialize artificial intelligence. And that's where our strong point is. We are into commercial artificial intelligence and enabling businesses to meet their goals in terms of generative AI.
I also have another question about maturity on the customer side. What does an enterprise customer look like who's ready to start creating their own? And where do you think we are in the region in terms of on the curve?
The first question was in regards to how does the maturity of a corporate client in terms of adoption of AI, right? So I would say, Rob, that's a great question, right? And I would say this to you and everybody who is in this business. You have to manage the expectations of the client and you have to understand their expectations. And that will kind of give you an index of their maturity and where the direction for this is coming from and how much they understand. Because most people are used to ChatGPT, right? It's basically like you drive in a Ferrari and then you go to your garage and you're like, man, I'm about to build a Ferrari. And you think you're about to go in your garage and build a Ferrari. It's like that's kind of like when people are like, oh, I want an AI and local AI, and their expectation is like ChatGPT. So you have to manage it. It's your job as the person interacting with the client to kind of manage their expectation. And once you basically come up with a clear expectations, and clear expectations, I mean basically like this. What is your idea of success? What is acceptance criteria? What are data driven? Because we want to be driven by data, not licking our finger in the air and waiting for the wind. What are clear KPIs of success? What are milestones within this project? And if they could clearly articulate that, then you know that they're kind of mature and they're ready. If they're like, I have an initiative to get generative AI in my organization, then they don't really know what they want yet. And you can help them and guide them, right? But in terms of maturity, it comes down to them having a correct framework and legal understanding of what they're trying to do that they can memorialize in a contract, because it's business at the end of the day. And you have to articulate these things in a clear manner that are executable by a contract. And typically in engineering contracts, that involves setting clear KPIs of success, milestones, and timelines. And if they kind of don't understand how to do that with generative AI, which is not their fault, this is new, right? And how to budget it, this is new. You got to help them. And you got to basically make that analysis. So that kind of lets you know the maturity of the customer. Also, how well did he understand compute? Because the compute is the key factor, like I said. So that answers the first question. And to your second question, in terms of maturity of the Middle East, in terms of AI, I mean, you've seen what's going on in Dubai. You've seen the initiatives here in Saudi Arabia. I would say that in an area where it's kind of like handicapped by sanctions and different things, they're doing a great job. They have great policies, great things in the works, you know. It's kind of like unfair to compare against the US and China. I think like for what Saudi Arabia and what the other Middle Eastern countries are doing, they're fine, they're good. The one thing I would say is that the private sector needs to be enabled a little bit more. Like in the US, like DARPA and the US government and the DoD really sponsor private businesses and private researchers. It's not government owned. Like our CEO, he basically invests from himself because he sees the need for AI, right? But now we have tons of people trying to invest in our company because we did it ourselves. But in the US, that you can get grants, you can get money, DARPA, research, and you can commercialize your products from money and they don't ask for it back. So I would say that's the difference versus the US, is that the private sector is heavily supported by the governmental sector. You don't compete against the government, basically. The government supports you and you can get lots of money and lots of funding, especially in AI, because it's a matter of national security. So it's just like a really healthy ecosystem. And I think they're trying to do that in Saudi, but I would say that's the biggest difference. And also the other thing is that in the younger kids, they need, like, for example, like we're NVIDIA partners, right? In terms of like small desktop computers and like NVIDIA Jetsons and these small devices where kids can actually learn on, or like small TensorFlow appliances, TensorFlow Lite and things like that. The kids need to start learning that a little bit younger, I would say, because in like the US it's happened. So that's the only two things I would say, like governmental support for small and medium-sized businesses and basically more education in terms of like younger kids in like middle school.
Makes sense. And I think, as you said, there are plans in place in Saudi Arabia to increase the amount of support in the private sector as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of big plans. I've also got a question from Mohammed, if I could bring him on to ask his question. Mohammed Maki?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a simple inquiry. As you are spearheading the development of Watad, can you shed some light on the anticipated initial pricing for this innovative service?
So I actually don't do any pricing. I really don't know the pricing part of it. If you're deploying on-prem, we'll basically quote you on the compute and we'll sell you the software with a license depending on how many users are using it. It's an enterprise grade solution. So we're NVIDIA partners, like I said. We can sell you NVIDIA. That's our separate business. And then we'll deploy the model as a Docker container, a containerized application, and we sell the license in regards to that. Then in terms of like future development, you asked about future, what we're working on.
Yeah, I'm inquiring about the future and if you will offer it as an open source for the future.
Great
Progress.
question. Yeah. So like I can see, I'm looking at your page. You're in the medical field, right? And one of the other product that we're working on is that in banking and in the medical field is a lot of these forms are in Arabic, and there's not a lot of software that can read Arabic documents offline. Like you have to use like Google Translate or something, right? There's no offline document parsing in Arabic that's highly accurate. So like imagine you have like an Arabic document, your patient's information, and you wanted to scan this document and send it directly in a structured data format to a database. There's nothing that exists for that in Arabic. So that's the other project and product that we're working on. In Watad, it's our enterprise AI suite, we call it, that we're working on. So we have several enterprise AI software for Arabic, which is the Arabic RAG system, our Arabic document understanding, and our Arabic ASR. And all these can be deployed offline within your organization as an API. And your developers can build applications on top of our API. So this is like kind of our vision for the future. for enterprise customers like banks, hospitals, governmental organizations, and things like that who need AI services on-prem. So that's kind of like where we're going with it in terms of our vision for the future in terms of Watad.
We're going to have to round off the discussion today. Any final comments, last word?
No, Carrington, I thank you, man. I thank you for all that you're doing. I really appreciate you letting me be here. I think it's definitely a service, what you're doing to the Middle East. And I want to say thank you for everything that you do and your time and your dedication to this. I thank everybody for being here and taking the time to listen to me.
You've been listening to a recording of Middle East AI News Live for Thursday, April 25th, 2024. Brought to you by Carrington Malin. Thanks for listening.